I mean, that was the joke of the show. That was the entire conceit of the show, is that I would speak right to the camera and fail.
How do you mean fail?
I would say, wait, is that the thing? And the kids would say, dude, no, of course that's not the thing. What is wrong with you? It's over there. But at the core of the show, I would ask for help.
Mm.
You know, that might have worked because you were playing a guy named Steve asking for help, and Steve Burns was a dude who needed some help.
I'm David Duchovny, and this is Fail Better, a show where failure, not success, shapes who we are. Steve Burns is best known as the original host of the children's show Blue's Clues. After his abrupt departure from the show in 2002, many fans speculated that he had died. He is, in fact, alive, and he's even hosting a new podcast called Alive. Here's our conversation. Hey, Steve.
Hey, David, how are you?
It's nice to meet you.
I'm very happy to be here, sir. It's nice to meet you.
Where are you?
I am in an undisclosed hermitage in the western Catskill Mountains, where it is heart-rendingly beautiful and quiet, and I love it up here.
I hate to be the one to disturb that quiet.
Well, don't.
That's terrible. Terrible that I'm there. My kids kind of, your heyday on Blue's Clues there, my kids kind of, I think they were too old. I wasn't really aware of Blue's Clues as a parent so much. But the whole idea of children's television is fascinating. But one of the quotes that I read that you said that I found really interesting was, if I knew I was going to be on camera, I wouldn't have auditioned. I felt it was something I would be terrible at, which is why, by the way, I was good at it.
That's real.
It is real. And I'm wondering how you make that distinction of, I thought I'd be terrible at it, which is why I was good at it. Not so much the on-camera stuff. I get that. But that kind of turn, that kind of nonsensical turn, I like very much for you to explain.
Well, I came to kids' TV ass backwards. I was not interested in children's television. I didn't even know any children when I auditioned for that show. And, as the story goes, I thought it was a voiceover audition.
Yeah.
And I was up for a series regular on Homicide at the same time as this, Yopey Dopey Kid show thing. So it was this real fork in the road, and one of them worked out and one of them didn't. But I do remember just being the most pretentious young Dustin Hoffman, dangerous short guy actor wannabe in New York City in these terrible clothes on a blue screen, talking to a bar of soap, thinking, I'm going to act the shit out of this. I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them what I can do.
And how long did that last?
Not long. They beat that out of me real fast. You'll relate to this. It was not a show that had anyone that understood theater, acting, TV, what my job was. It was all child development specialists. Brilliant child development specialists.
Right.
Incredibly smart people.
Well, that must have made you feel safe in some way, that you weren't giving crack to these kids.
Yeah, 100%. I was always proud. I always said I was an accidental educator. All of everything I did was just in service of a curriculum. Mm-hmm. And I never doubted the genius of what we were doing. And I was enormously proud to be a part of it. That's the thing about children's television is when it's bad, I personally find it very difficult to watch. But when it's good, it's transcendent and the best of all entertainment, probably.
What are you thinking of when you say that?
Sesame, Fred Rogers, Peanuts in some ways. Some of the stuff is important storytelling and is important formative stuff, especially Sesame Street,
ethically, the shows when they work, they're like parables. They're like they can be like biblical parables without the Bible. They teach kids difficult situations and how to
They
get
can,
through.
they certainly can go there. I mean, Fred Rogers certainly, that's what
Yeah.
that was. That was his ministry,
Any
but
Pee-wee Herman for you?
later in life, I mean, I
Yeah.
thought it was completely inspired and absolutely genius and totally not for kids at all. And I
But
loved,
in a way,
I
it was though,
loved
right?
it became that from my understanding of it. Like, I think he was a good dude and realized, oh, this is working for kids, so that's what we're doing now. But that's not how it started. And that's not where his sensibilities were when he
Right.
was doing it. But that show was awesome. And I ripped him off left and right
No,
on
tell
that
me
show.
about that. How so?
Well, again, not being a fan of kids TV, but being a fan of clown. And this is something you and I hope we'll get into. I'm a huge Beckett nerd. And just sort of being a clown, a fan of the vaudeville sort of clown, sort of as a vehicle for much more than comedy.
We can get into it right now because it's improbable that we'll get back to it. So let's get into I don't see myself circling back to Beckett. So let's take the opportunity.
Well, that's how I got into acting. Was I went to a little scholarship arts program as a kid when I was in high school, and I got
Where was that? That was
in
where'd you grow up?
Pennsylvania.
In
Erie, Pennsylvania was where the program was, and I had got accepted for writing and for theater, and they told me I could do both. And when I got there, they made me pick one, and there were much cuter girls in the theater thing, so that's what I did. And the first thing we saw were these the two instructors performing Endgame.
That's insane.
And it rewired me. It rewired my aesthetic in the ways, in that way that only music has done to me otherwise. I said, oh shit, everything is now different. And I want to do that. Who wrote that? What is that? Right.
Can you put that into words, that rewiring? I mean, I think I understand it. And I think I have a similar experience, not with theater, but with his writing and with his consciousness. But for you, at how old are you reformulating your mind?
17.
Yeah, so you're right there. So what is it?
It's a good time for it,
What does it sound like to your mind?
It was the sense of the absurd that I already knew rhymed with my worldview. I already knew that was in my DNA somewhere. And Endgame is my favorite Beckett play, and it's funny. And I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
And profoundly painful and dark. And I guess, I'd always been kind of a morose little dude. And I think, there's a part of me that sort of learned to navigate life in that way, to laugh through it or whatever. And something in it just resonated with me, and the style of it, the form, the vaudeville of it, just sort of being a vessel for so much more. And then the language was, as you know better than I ever will, but the language is so profound and dark and funny and smart. And a lot of the music I liked was trying to be like that too. I was listening to a lot of the Smiths at the time, and it was all literary and deliberately witty and explicitly smart.
I guess what rewired me, if I could jump in there just to add on, is, I was coming to Beckett after, studying English literature, and English literature kind of ended with James Joyce, which was all of English literature in one book, Ulysses. Almost every word, or Finnegan's Wake which I've never gotten through, but it's the compendium of all the words and all the literatures. And so then Beckett comes, and I'm overloaded, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't even play in this arena, And then Beckett comes along to me, and it's all stripped down. There's no big words. There's no confessional. There's nothing quote unquote personal. And yet there's nothing confessional. It feels personal. It feels personal in a universal way. So the seeming simplicity of it was what blew me away.
It is simple. I mean, some of it is so. See, you, if I'm correct, you actually are one of those dudes who reads the novels.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I can't. I have tried and I have failed.
Well,
and I'll try to fail better. But
there's a utilitarian reason for that.
Yeah.
When I was casting about for a dissertation idea when I was in college, I knew I wanted to write on Beckett, but everybody has written on Beckett's plays. There's just reams and reams of critical work on the plays. So I thought, well, maybe I can say something interesting about the books because not many people have written about that. And I don't have to do as much research. I don't have to read everything that's been written on the books because there's not that much written on the books.
Yeah.
But I think of the books almost as like long monologues.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at them that way, but they're long, and I understand not being able to get through them.
You know Bill Irwin. You know that guy.
I know who it is. I know his work.
He does a one-man show called On Beckett that you might want to check out.
Yeah.
He performs a lot of the literature, not the plays, as monologue.
Well, I know he's a clown too.
Oh, he is.
That gets back to your
He
initial.
is the keeper of the sacred art. He is one of my real touchstones, and I see him around sometimes in New York, and I just humiliate myself and try to talk to him, and he's always very polite, but he is such a hero of mine. Again, it's that sad clown thing, right? It's that, and there's so much of coming back. There's so much of that in Sesame Street. So much of that in Sesame Street. I always say that, you know, Bert is more human than any of the other characters on Sesame Street. And he's a freaking Muppet because there's something broken about Bert, you know?
Ernie's the one with the conical head and
No,
no,
backwards.
that's Bert.
Bert is the uptight kind of like.
Bert's the straight man.
Yeah, he's grumpy and he's undiagnosed with something for sure. You know what I mean? And it's very easy to imagine his life is hard. You can picture him at work. You know, like it's just incredible the humanity that you know. Looking back, people always ask me, you know, what are your influences in kids' TV? And in hindsight, it's clear to me it's all Frank Oz. You know, it's all Bert and Grover and all of that kind of stuff, and some Fred Rogers, I guess. But
so how do you see yourself in Bert? It seems to have struck a chord with you personally, right?
Well, you know, on the kid show that I used to do, they really wanted an Ernie, right? Because Ernie was more, hey, you know, just kind of mischievous and irascible
and
innocent for sure, and always optimistic and happy. But they cast a Bert, so what they got was a Bert playing Ernie, and that kind of worked in a way because I didn't know any other way to do it, you know, and so there was at least I was trying to add like actual human stuff in this very clownish character.
It sounds almost painful.
Well, it was, you know, what people don't know and what I didn't know is the entire time I was on that kids' TV show, which was all about empowerment and curiosity and wonder. I was dealing with undiagnosed severe clinical depression the entire time, right? And I knew my job was really fucking hard. I knew that, like harder than it should be. But I didn't know why, and I didn't know what was going on. It didn't make sense to me. I was a kid, you know, I was like 22 years old or something.
Yeah.
And I thought it was, you know, just my fault somehow. And I just decided, you know, you got a good thing going here and it's kind of a big responsibility and fight it, push, fight, keep your head down. But there's a cost to that, all of that, especially in particular, I think, when the contours of your job involve providing self-esteem to America's children, and you don't have your own approval that day, or, you have to sort of go to the well for boundless enthusiasm and wonder and joy, and exuberance. And there's not much in there, and as being a kid, I didn't really understand what was going on. I didn't have any replenishment strategies for any of that. And so it did hurt sometimes to do. I think for anyone, it would be difficult. And I think a lot of people can relate to that actually in their job.
I think absolutely. But I also think it brings me back to the initial quote that I brought up, which is, I think not because you were depressed, but because you were in touch with that part of yourself, I think that's why you were so good at your job, because I think you were trustworthy to children. You weren't just trying to fool them with this happiness guy. Underneath, because kids see everything, underneath they knew, and they could trust you. This is me just making this up right now, but I think that
right.
must be true.
I think you're right. I always use Barney as an example, right? Like,
well, who doesn't really?
Yeah, I know. That poor dinosaur is bad. And people he's taking strays left and right.
Yeah.
But Barney is a mask, right? He's literally a monochromatic mask. And I think kids will go with that, with the, hey, how are you?
Right.
They'll go with that to a certain extent, but kids are smart, and they know that that doesn't represent the human condition. They know on some level that doesn't represent what life is. And Bert is much closer to what life is than that mask. And I think by accident, I was bringing a lot of human ballast to that role in order to get through it. Now, the entire conceit of that show is I would talk right to the camera.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that as an actor.
That was my favorite part about that. But
I want to hear about that.
But I was constantly failing. I mean, that was the joke of the show. That was the entire conceit of the show, is that I would speak right to the camera and fail.
How do you mean fail?
And I would say, wait, is that the thing? And the kids would say, dude, no, of course that's not the thing. What is wrong with you? It's over there. And the kids would save me, and I would fail, and the kids would save me, and I would fail, and the kids would save me. But at the core of the show, I would ask for help. Will you help me? Right? And I would really make a meal out of that moment. And it was pointed out to me by my best friend once that, that might have worked because you were playing a guy named Steve asking for help, and Steve Burns was a dude who needed some help.
All too often, people aren't familiar enough with their finances. They couldn't tell you how much they have saved for retirement, how much debt is on their credit cards, or which institutions handle which accounts. And when there's so much to keep track of and forget about, people risk leaving money on the table. Fortunately, you can get organized and confident in your finances with Monarch Money, an all-in-one personal finance tool. Monarch pulls your whole financial life into one clean interface. And right now, Monarch is offering 50% off your first year, just for our listeners. Link all your accounts in minutes and get data visuals, insightful categorization of your spending, and more control over your money. Named the best budgeting app of 2025 by the Wall Street Journal, Monarch helps you stay informed so nothing gets left behind. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code FAILBETTER at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code FAILBETTER. What led to your quitting the show the first time around? I mean, I get the stakes. There's a version of this where you kind of bifurcate yourself and you start living a double life while you're doing the show, and then there's a version of it where being happy all the time is your own personal fake it till you make it, and now all of a sudden, wow, where's my depression? It's gone. I actually faked it until I made it. And then there's the version of after how many years? Just 2 or 3 years? How long was it that you were doing the show?
5.
Oh, 5 years. That you quit. And again, quitting is something we come across in this podcast a lot because quitting is associated with some kind of a failure, when in fact quitting can be the most positive experience and empowering experience that you can do. So what you feeling it coming for a while. I mean, it seems like it was there from the beginning, this kind of sense of, wow, this is great, but it's also the opposite of great.
Well, I mean, I don't mind saying now, I say I quit, but I think I got fired first.
Really?
Because I wanted money.
Oh, sure.
They were making so much money. We were the number one kid show in many, many countries for a while.
Oh.
Like we were beating Sesame Street, and we had a ton of merch. And I would kind of say, I believe I'm one of the pillars of the success of the show.
Right.
I think that's fair to say. I can't afford to live in New York City. That doesn't seem right to me. Is there, and the truth is, for the first couple of seasons of that show, I wouldn't have been able to do it except I had this voiceover thing going on.
Really?
So it was my side hustle at first.
Right.
While they were making $1 billion, So there was just kind of a matter of pride, I think, at a certain point where I was like, well, that was great, but they're not going to pay me. So I'm out, And then they kind of said, well, all right, please come back. We'll pay you something.
Yeah.
And I stuck around for a while, and eventually I think it was fair, but eventually I did have to leave because, I mentioned that well that I would have to go to find the spirit of the show or whatever, to find the thing that allowed that connection. And it wasn't really there, I couldn't find it. And I was struggling. And I probably stayed a little too long, actually, And I still hadn't, addressed any mental health anything. I was still just like, I'm out. Right. And I probably wouldn't have left when I left if I had a better handle on myself, if that makes sense.
It does. Where did you go about finding your handle? How did you go about finding your handle? And when?
Crisis, like everybody. Eventually, it was really around the death of my father. I was very involved in his caregiving, and it was a lot. It was pretty heavy. It was gnarly. And I was just getting out of a very bad, disappointing relationship at the time, and I just felt really alone. And it finally exceeded my capacity, and there's just no other way to put that. And just kind of flipped out. I didn't sleep I remember I didn't sleep for like 5 days. All I would do is like jump rope, and I felt great. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then I just kind of lost my mind, and that's when I did, the thing from TV. In every episode of that show, I would sit in a chair and look at someone in the eyes and say, "Will you help me?" And it wasn't until I did that in my 3-dimensional human life that things changed. So yeah, unfortunately it does seem to be the thing, doesn't it? You gotta go too far. And then, and I don't want to make it sound like I wasn't in rehab or anything like that. It was all just like, um, it just got too heavy for Superman to lift, you know?
Well, you failed,
Yeah.
you know. I mean, that's what a gift. I mean, I feel like there have been times that you know, skirted failure, and that was a mistake. To You know, you'll play your game. I'll play my game for as long as I can succeed at it, even if I'm barely scraping by. It's better, or feels better, than looking at myself in the mirror and saying, "Okay, this is it." You know, let's drop that mask of success, drop that mask of whatever. And what is bothering you? What are you covering up by doing all these things?
Yeah, you know, you don't fight that shit. You collect it.
Mm.
You know, that's what happens. You collect it and then you collapse. You know.
Did you find yourself kind of thinking back to your time with those child psychologists and hearing what they were saying differently, or was it just
yeah. Oh my God, yeah. I look back at Blue's Clues now and I'm like, there are so many incredible life lessons in that show. Just incredible. Like I talk about the practice of listening, the practice of deeply examining silences and embracing them and leaning into them. And that's a practice I do every day now. Like that's just fantastic stuff. And Blue's Clues was all about leading an examined life on many levels. We would just run around with joy and look for little clues and bits of information that led to greater understanding, and then we would talk about them as friends. Like it's fantastic shit. Mm-hmm. You know, the amount of lessons that I have learned from that show in hindsight are extraordinary. I used to really struggle with Steve from Blue's Clues. You know, there was a real sort of personality tension there between like which one of us exists and which one of us doesn't.
Right.
And now I love that dude. You know, he's become like a real teacher, you know, of me personally. You know, I don't like to look back with regret, but I do wish that I had been able to sniff some of that back in the day.
You wish you'd been a little nicer to Steve, don't you?
Sure, yeah. He was a cool guy. I like that guy.
Just might have given him a different shirt.
Yeah.
Those pants are terrible. Worse than the shirt.
Real bad. Yeah, it was real bad. He looked bad.
Do you have them hidden away somewhere, those
They're
chinos?
in a closet back here somewhere.
Yeah,
they don't fit anymore.
What is fascinating about your style, your particular style that you created on Blue's Clues, is you seem to be waiting. You seem to be in a conversation. It's not that kind of one-way performance that you get with a lot of people who look into the camera and kids shows like that. You're actually you're listening, and that's fascinating to me because I'm like, well, did you write responses in your head that you were listening to? Did you just improvise a voice in your head that was speaking to you? What was it like in those moments?
I mean, the real is I would listen to the silence, you know, and, you know, I would listen, and I always described it as trying to like balance the room on the end of a pin, you know, and kind of create that little tension, you know, and I loved it. That was my favorite part. Like I couldn't wait to do that part every time, you know. It's like, this is where I get to do stuff, you know.
Right.
And eventually, what you learn is that silence has a voice, you know. There's stuff there, and I'm just doing a little kiddie show on basic cable, you know. But that moment, that listening to that silence, has been, that's a wonderful practice. You know, that's an instructive, wonderful way to spend your day in a lot of ways. I'm grateful for having to do that as part of my job. But that's what I would do. And I would always do it until it felt weird. And when it felt weird, it was probably about right.
Yeah.
You know, but I didn't really like hear a kid in my voice or in my head or anything like that. I was more just leaning into the silence, just because, it's, I guess, that acting 101 thing. If you're really listening to something, then it'll appear like you're really listening to something,
Right.
So, I guess that's where it came from. But
it's not just the silence.
To answer your question about what was so brilliant about the show was that conceit that I hear you, that I'm with you, and that you know more than me. That allows special access. If you can sell that, if you can get kids on board with that, then their brains are wide open and you can just cram the knowledge in there, and that's what they did so brilliantly, because we had that special access, and then all of the curriculum was incredibly well scaffolded. The first layer of the game was easier than the second and easier than the third. The second game built on that game and was harder. And by the time I would sit in this chair, and it was straight up critical thinking and deductive reasoning, straight up, let's test the hypothesis before we make a decision or a belief about it. It was fantastic,
Yeah.
And on top of that, they fought really hard for a different viewing schedule. They fought really hard to air the same episode all week, not out of any laziness or anything, but because it was designed to be hard, and it was designed for return mastery.
Oh.
And so kids were like, I'm getting it. So, yeah.
Some of the discussions that I've had on the podcast, because it's nominally about failure, is we talk about kids sometimes, and that's all kids do is fail.
Yeah.
Because they have no mastery of anything. They don't know that much. They're not good at things. They're not supposed to be. And that kind of response to failure, if you can learn as a child the resilience in the response to failure, or the naturalness of failing, and the fact that failing never, ever ends, and you can get better at things, but there's no shame in the failure. That's the essence of childhood, is being comfortable. I think a healthy childhood is being comfortable with failure.
Oh, I think it's innate, don't you? I think it's inherent in a child.
Well, where does the shame come in? Where does the
you learn that?
Yeah.
That's learned. The sense of wonder. Wonder is like looking at adversity and inviting it, looking at the unknown and inviting it to play. There's a saying in child development that play is the work of childhood. And I think that is absolutely true. And you're so right. I think that children are all beginner's mind, and there's infinite possibilities, and the failure is part of the game,
Right.
And I think there is no shame in failing until you learn to feel shame in failing,
Do you remember, as in your own life, a moment where you felt that kind of innocence lost from going to, my job is to play, to my job is to make money, my job is to succeed, my job is to be the next Dustin Hoffman?
Well, I think for a long time I thought I failed because I ended up on kids' TV. I thought I failed because I didn't make the right choices that would have led toward something closer to my expectation. I felt wildly miscast. I felt unqualified beyond belief to be on that show. I felt that I was leading someone else's life and that I had done something wrong. I know now that was largely, my unaddressed sort of issues speaking to me, but it felt often like failure, even though I knew objectively that it was wildly successful. And I know now it's just, I just see it as an impossible gift. And I wish I could have seen it like that at the time, but
seems impossible to have that kind of consciousness when you're in the midst of it, I have to say.
Yeah, it is.
That's what we all learn. I wish I would have enjoyed that. But I wonder, I get the sense that you kept on trying to do what was in your mind good work.
Yeah.
That you kept on trying to act. If you're like in this, okay, I'm in this kid show, but you have those moments of silent connection that you talked about. But
well, I loved those. Those moments were always so important to me. And also, as I said before, you know, I was kind of the only custodian of those moments. You know, there wasn't. Well, yeah. Well, it's not that I would try to tell people about what it is I was trying to go for there, but they were like child development specialists. They were like, yeah, just be happy, you know, just smile. And I'm like, well, it's not really, you know, it's got to be vulnerable in that moment, and you know, he's got to really need your help. Or they're like, yeah. So, but I like that, you know, because I feel like, oh, this is my work,
right?
You know, and it wasn't until like 4 years ago, that I understood that it connected. You know, I did Blue's Clues turned 25, and you know, they asked me to do a shout out to the little kids, and I was like, those little kids have no idea who I am,
right?
You know, but I will do a shout out to my homie, you know, who's now 30.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't write it. I just improv'd it. And I just spoke to them. I just scaled the show. You know, it used to be about what was important. It used to be about shapes and colors and vegetables and graham crackers and whatever. But I just spoke right to them about student loans and the pandemic, and this is hard, and we're adults, and shit, man, you know, and they put that on the internet, and it kind of exploded there for a second, and I thought, wow, that connected, you know, and it's still sort of there in a way that surprised me.
One of the great acting tidbits I ever received was, you know, you see actors who are very interesting, like, oh, yeah, he's really interesting. Look at him. He's running around being super interesting. And the tidbit that I got was like, you want to be interesting, be interested.
Right.
And that's why we love to watch kids, and that's why we love to watch animals, because they are just fucking interested. Like, I watch my dog, it's life and death with that fly he's trying to catch. And it's hysterically funny and riveting to watch because he's interested.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and that's another thing that I wished for my kids, and I wish for all people. And it's so difficult now because we're inundated with so much stimuli.
Yeah.
Hard to generate our own interest in something.
Oh,
there's so many things vying for our interest. It's
so important, you know, and the way that our interest is commodified is through conflict. Mm. You know, the whole internet is maximized for interesting conflict, and that's the whole reason I'm doing a podcast. Really, it's like, all right, if I'm talking to, if I happen to have this special access to this generation and a half who grew up on me in a parasocial way, in an early sort of parasocial relationship, wherein I did everything I could to get you to believe that we were in dialogue, we were in conversation. Can we keep doing that in a way that maintains that attention, but includes empathy, compassion, silence? You know, these are missing things.
I see you do it on your podcast. You know, you still wait. You still take those long pauses, which are riveting. And I just think ballsy.
I did this thing on TikTok just as a social experiment, right? I was like, what if I do nothing? You know, I in a way I was trying to prove it to someone that I know, that it would still work.
There's no such thing as nothing, Steve.
Right.
That's what you know.
But all I do is I put my iPhone on my table and I say, hey, what's up, baby girl? How you doing? What's going on? Tell me, you know? And then I just pause.
I told you not to call me baby girl. I thought we went over
I know.
There were ground rules that we talked about before this.
You did, and I forgot.
Okay.
And that's on me.
All right,
but
You get 3 baby girls with me. That's one.
But I just sit there and listen. And I got to tell you, it hits people emotionally. And that's not something I'm doing. That is something they're bringing to that moment.
What do you think that is?
I believe it's because it is a missing thing with the phone, right? We forget. I mean, the whole point of the phone, the whole point of all of this technology was to bring us together, community. And everyone knows it's made us isolated and weird instead. And we forget that there's a human being on the other side of every single screen with a fragile human soul that you can harm in the comment section or you can uplift with your words. And I firmly believe that we have a responsibility to fragile human souls. I believe that. And we need to humanize this experience because it's going to swallow us whole. I don't see us not being online. So I think we need to hurry up and humanize this. And I think listening, real listening, deep listening is a big part of that.
You must have a very fundamental connection to trolling because of the death rumor.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated by your I want to hear what that felt like, because I think I had a death rumor about me that lasted a day or something. And it I think about my death probably as much as the next person, maybe a little more. I don't know. I think about death, but it didn't make me think about it more or less. You know, it was just like, well, that's stupid. I know I'm alive. Let's just whatever. Yours went on for 5 years. Is that right?
Longer, 15.
15 years.
Yeah.
So can you tell me the different stages of grief
Sure.
that you went through in those 15 years? Because I think it must be an amazing gift, again, at this point, to have gone through. As frustrating as it must have been, as insulting, whatever, however you want to take it.
Those are right.
Yeah.
At first, it was funny, right? Because it was so absurd. I was literally making television, you know? And I also understood it in a way. There is a human impulse. It's not our finest instinct, but there is a human impulse to corrupt something that seems implausibly pure, right? And it's a fun balloon to pop. Oh, that dude's on heroin. Ha 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 ha. That is so the opposite of what he appears to be. That satisfies my lizard brain. You know,
It's all rigged. It's rigged.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go. It's that mindset, right?
Yeah.
And the rumor that I died, I think, was at first that I was on heroin. To this day, I've never even seen heroin, but I was dead of a heroin overdose, which I hated because I didn't want people to say drugs and Blue's Clues in the same sentence ever. You know, and that pissed me off. We were all working way too hard for that. And there was nothing I could do.
This was while you're shooting the show.
And this was when the internet was beginning to internet for the first time.
Right.
Right. And I don't think anybody had any context for the kind of agreement, national consensus.
So you thought, surely I can put this cat back in the bag.
Oh, dude, they had
Here's
me
the truth.
on.
There's the truth. So here it is.
I went on the Rosie O'Donnell show and did a whole episode of Blue's Clues with her, and it didn't help. I remember I danced with Busta Rhymes on a show, and people were like, "Whatever, man, you're dead." I'm like, "This is insane. This is literally insane." And then it just became indelible. And after 2 years of that, it's not funny,
Right.
and it started to feel like a cultural preference.
That's a deep way to put it.
Yeah,
And
it's how
well,
it felt. Now,
you're taking it very personally at that point.
of
It becomes
course,
personal.
of course. And now, if you couple that with untreated severe depression, right? After 15 years, you identify with this idea. And
can you explain to me what that means
sure.
exactly?
Eventually, I, somewhere secret, believed that it was true in meaningful ways.
That you were dead.
Yeah, that the version of me that I was supposed to be died, right? In some way. And that's a strange ghost to put your arm around for years and years. And I'm not afraid to say now, at the worst points, I felt like I was supposed to be. Right. And the indelible rumor of my demise was a convenient thing to point to, a little too convenient. It's like, oh, well, obviously this is true. This is fit. This is what's supposed to be. I'll at the very least play along.
And so did your behavior change at that point?
Yeah, I scared myself a little, and that's kind of when I said, this is not how I want to be, and also I got to be there for my dad, and that death rumor fucked me up, and that's why I get mad at internet bullying and internet trolls. Even if you're trolling a celebrity, I don't care. That's a person. And it matters how we treat people. It just does. And you can be part of an aggregate of great harm with your anonymous trolling in a comment section. The Scarlet Letter is all about this. People would rather die physically than socially. Mm-hmm. These are big deals. And we have a power to cause great harm with this technology in those ways. And I'm not just scolding everyone. Like, I get that it does feel like there are no consequences to what you're doing because there's 10 billion people online and you are just one voice. But you're part of a Voltron of Mean at that point, And if it didn't matter,
is that a Marvel Universe reference?
I'm trying to remember. I thought you'd get it. I
don't watch any of those movies. Sorry.
Oh, it's not. It's pre-Marvel. It was Voltron was a robot. It's like a Japanese robot made up of other robots.
All right.
No one
really
gets Voltron. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great reference then.
Yes. That no one will get except me.
Well, now they will because you've unpacked it for us. But I think there's a great spot to kind of sit down in there, which is true. And I could just tell you that yesterday, because this podcast for me is relatively new and I'm relatively new at it, I'll go in the comment section. Stupidly.
Don't do that. Yeah.
And it'll fuck me up for, not that long, but I tend to, anything negative, I'll tend to go, that's probably right. That's probably true. That's probably right. That's probably right.
Easier to believe, right?
Somehow. And you and I don't know where that comes from, but it comes from somewhere. But I just think about kids and I think about my kids and I think, Jesus, it's just this hall of mirrors. There's no true reflection coming back to you. There's just this funhouse mirror coming back to you constantly, or there's a bullshit Instagram life perfect image coming, which is just as painful in many ways for people that don't have that life. So
sure,
nobody has that life. So
well, yeah, even
you're like the test subject. It's in a way it's very instructive to. I think you have a lot to say about this phenomenon because for you it got taken to the extreme, and it got taken to the extreme for 15 years. I don't know. Do you still have to deal with it?
Not really. No. I mean, there was that great gift.
What fell? How did it turn around?
I did a little. I went viral. I said, "Hey, baby girl, what's up?" You know,
that's two. That's two.
Well, that wasn't specifically directed at you. That was
counting it. Sorry.
That was the every baby girl.
I'm the host. I choose.
That was the royal. Anyway, I did that. I did that little shout out video, and it went mega viral, and billions and billions of unique impressions, whatever that means. I don't even know what it means.
Right.
But it was everywhere for a while, and it was so emotional because I thought, oh my God, they know I'm here and they're happy. I get emotional thinking about it. It was really healing.
Yeah.
In a big way to know that, you know, one of the things I said was, I never forgot you, you know, and they said, we never forgot you, you know, and I thought they did. I thought they all thought I was dead. But instead, you know, I guess we were one of those shows. Because I had those shows. I'm sure you had shows that we started this conversation talking about characters and shows from children's television that had an impression on us, and I guess we were one of those. So that feels very alive to me.
Yeah. I look forward to more of that and more of you. And I do believe there's some acting there. I'm seeing some.
Hey, cool.
I'm seeing somebody reaching out and go, give me some of that Steve Burns.
Well, thank you so much for having me, man. I really enjoyed this. I love talking to anyone about Samuel Beckett. So I love what you're doing. I love the message of failing better. I think it is important to hear. And this was a lot of fun, baby girl.
That's it. That's number 3. So that's perfect.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks so much for listening to Fail Better. If you haven't subscribed to Lemonada Premium yet, now's the perfect time because guess what? You can listen completely ad-free. Plus, you'll unlock exclusive bonus content like the full version of my post-interview thoughts that you won't hear anywhere else. That's more of my recaps on interviews with guests like Chris Carter and Emily Deschanel. Just tap that subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or head to lemonadapremium.com to subscribe on any other app. That's lemonadapremium.com. Don't miss out. Fail Better is a production of Lemonada Media in coordination with King Baby. It is produced by Keegan Zema, Aria Bracci, and Donnie Matias. Our engineer is Brian Castillo. Our SVP of Weekly is Steve Nelson. Special thanks to Carl Ackerman, Tom Kupinski, Brad Davidson, and Jonathan Smith. The show is executive produced by Stephanie Whittles-Wax, Jessica Cordova-Kramer, and me, David Duchovny. The music is also by me and my band, the lovely Colin Lee, Pat McCusker, Mitch Stewart, Davis Rowan, and Sebastian Modak. You can find us online at Lemonada Media, and you can find me at David Duchovny. Follow Fail Better wherever you get your podcasts, or listen ad-free on Amazon Music with your Prime membership.